Hello out there, casual fanatics. Jeremy here, and welcome to another episode of Fun 5e Builds, except this time, once again, we're rolling back the clock back to 4e. See, for a very short period of time, uh, when I was playing 4e, I was in this one session, it's kind of a homebrew session with a couple of people that I roll with regularly every week. One of them is my GM that I actually got to play with for once, and we had different characters from what we had normally played. And one of them, the one that I was playing, I decided to do something a little different. And actually was kind of the first glimpses of me deciding to do something like what I've been doing with this series, which is just create whatever the hell I felt like. What I did was I created a D&D character based on one of my favorite characters from some kind of fictional, universe, and decided to D&Dize them kind of in the same way that maybe Nerdarchy would. Because, of course, they are one of my inspirations for these videos. So what I did was I went back to my love of Beast Wars. And I decided, what if there was a Warforged that kind of looked a little bit like a Warforged depiction of a Dragonborn? What if he was a swordsman? What if he had a samurai background? What if I made Dinobot? And that's exactly what I did. Now, I should preface this by saying that this particular build is not the exact same Dinobot that I actually played. I actually rebuilt Dinobot specifically for this purpose to make him a little bit closer to what he was like in the show. Sorry for the camera bounce there. But the original version that I did was actually built as a shielding sword mage, because I kind of wanted to have a character there that could kind of bolster the other two. But if I were to make Dinobot outright in 4E, this is how I'd make him. So, let's take a look, see what we've got. Again, Dinobot unaligned. Very important, because Dinobot, while he ultimately ended up being a good guy and being on the side of the Maximals, really, for the most part, thought about himself and his own code of honor. He didn't really care much about doing the right thing. He just cared about doing the honorable thing, and that is textbook lawful neutral. And in 4E, the closest we get to lawful neutral is unaligned. So, unaligned. Race, of course, Warforged. He's a robot in disguise. And his class, like I said, my original version had him as a sword mage to kind of go with, laser beams and sword. This one, I decided to go full-on knight archetype fighter. So, he's just full-on, go in, whack stuff. Height and weight, I decided to go roughly about the same height and weight as the Jurassic Park style velociraptors that he was patterned after, which are not actually the same size as real velociraptors, but artistic license, okay? We'll give him that. So let's take a brief look at what kind of stats we got going here. Already, you can see that his AC is pretty good for this level. 26 AC at level 6. That's really good AC. I mean, to have 26 AC at level 6, hardly anybody's going to be hitting you. Because he's a Warforged, most of the focus is actually going to be on AC and Fortitude, because he's a robot. Robots can't get sick. And in fact, we'll actually see some of that elements later on when we get into the feats. Of course, looking at this character sheet, you see a lot of differences relative to 5e. For instance, instead of hit dice, you have healing surges, kind of charges of healing ability. Because he is a con build, he has quite a bit of HP for this level, 61. Nothing to sneeze at. And he gets whopping 12 surges a day. 12 times per day, he can heal himself up for 15 points. Plus whatever bonuses your clerics give or whatever bonuses he has from conditionals. Clearly, as you can see, strength is his strong suit. Constitution is nothing to sneeze at either. 16 Constitution. Dexterity, Dinobot, he is a warrior. He's known for being very dexterous. I also kind of made him a little bit higher in intelligence, a little above average in intelligence. Because let's face it, Dinobot was a smart cookie. He knew enough to realize when Megatron was going off the deep end. And he knew enough to know that where his best bet for survival and victory lay. Granted, still kind of, well, like I said, lawful neutral as fuck, but got a good processor up here, he's not running, a piece of crap AMD like my laptop. No, he's like running the Cybertronian equivalent of whatever top of the line i7 is out right now. Wisdom, about average. Again, he knows enough to know where his best bets lie, but not always the best leader when it came down to it, which is probably why Optimus didn't put him in charge when Optimus was indisposed at one time. And of course, because it's Dinobot. Charisma of 8. Because let's face it, guy's abrasive as fuck. Fun, but abrasive. So, just looking a bit here at just basic stats here. Initiative +6. Going to be getting into battle really quickly. Speed, not that fast, but he doesn't need to be. Passive insight, passive perception, he's fair with. He's not going to be the best at those, but he's pretty fair. Of course, most of his power is going to lie over here with intimidation, endurance, and athletics. Those are his 3 main powerful abilities. Those are his bread and butter. He is strong and tough. He's a warrior. He lives the warrior's life. And he's got a pretty good 2 hit for that level to match too, +13. Not too shabby. Alright. Equipment. This is something I don't really go into very much with 5e, because usually in 5e and in other various different games like Pathfinder and the earlier editions of D&D, normally what you do is whatever piece of equipment you have at the beginning, either you get a masterwork version of later, or you just upgrade it along the way. And it's usually, unless you come across a magic weapon that your GM gives you. Well, with this character builder, you can actually give your character appropriate starting equipment for whatever level you're making them at. So for instance, I made this character at level 6. So in 4E, how it usually works is you get one magic item that's a level above, one magic item that's a level at, and then one magic item that's a level below, and then like a bit of gold besides. So in this case, sorry, I got to scratch my back here for a second. I do have 3 magic items here on him to start out with. An Amulet of Life +1, a Parrying Longsword +2, and Magic Plate Armor +2. We'll get into what all those do a little bit later. The big thing to pay attention to on this page is right over here. Background, Blade Master. And that is what gives him a little bit of a bonus to insight, and also the ability, and also it's kind of, background's kind of a way you can get kind of a little extra bonus on stuff. They're entirely optional. In this case, I think I gave him a little boost to insight because otherwise his insight would have been terrible because not that great on wisdom. And of course, theme is samurai, and the themes thing for 4E actually adds additional powers that you can put in. And again, we'll take a look at what those are a little bit later. I particularly like the samurai theme, not just because it fits Dinobot, but because the powers that it comes with, pretty fun. So, the features that we're looking at, because he's a Warforged, these are all the racial features that he has. First, he is a living construct. He doesn't need to eat, he doesn't need to drink, he doesn't need to breathe, doesn't need to sleep. Since in, D&D worlds, Energon does not exist, you can pretty much just gloss over that with, having a self-sustaining reactor or something to help sustain his spark. Of course, he does need a little bit of restful time. But for constructs, much like with Ladrin and elves, you can get away with only 4 hours of inactivity as an extended rest. So basically, if you have a party that is all elves or constructs, your extended rest could only be 4 hours long. However, if you do have like dwarves or humans or halflings or whatever, extended rest is still going to be 8 hours, and those people who only need the 4 hours need to find some kind of light activity with which to pass the rest of the time, like say keeping watch, reading a book. If they're a bard, maybe they play music to help calm everyone's nerves. Who knows? Warforged Mind, automatic +1 to will defense. Again, with wisdom not being the greatest, that's a good thing to have. Warforged Resilience, +2 bonus to saving throws against ongoing damage. So if you have an effect that adds damage every turn, that is save ends, you get a bonus to save for that. Say if you have an attack that does 5 ongoing fire save ends, or 5 ongoing poison save ends, or something like that. Get a +2 to the saving throw. So basically you only have to roll an 8 on the die or higher. Gives you better odds to save against that. And then Warforged Resolve, that's actually a power, so we'll get to it a bit later. Samurai class and other features. Since we are samurai, again, we do have some powers. One of which is called Iaijutsu, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I know I'm saying that a lot. And then at level 5 of being a samurai, you also get a +2 power bonus to diplomacy and intimidate. If that does not say Dinobot, I do not know what is. Because let's face it, while Dinobot's not kind of an abrasive guy, he is rather persuasive when he wants to be. He's got a little bit of guile to him. I see but no better evidence than the time that he tricked Pterosaur into helping him, and then shoving him out of the Transformers equivalent of a toilet chute. Or at least I think it was the Transformers equivalent of a toilet chute. Actual feats for this character. Focused superiority. Wisdom modifier to damage with opportunity attacks. Gets to add the wisdom modifier to opportunity attacks. Wisdom modifier is +0. That does not particularly make any difference right now then. Shield finesse. You ignore the check penalty for having a shield equipped. That means basically holding a shield does not damage any of your dex rolls at all. And since Dinobot's fighting style was sword and his revolving tail blades as a shield, this works. The power attack feat. Take -2 to a melee attack and gain +2 or +3 or +4 by tier to the damage roll, unless you're using the weapon two-handed, in which case it's +3, +6, +9. He is using his weapon primarily one-handed, so it's the +2, +3, +4. And that by tier, what that means is once you get up to level 11, you've gone out of the heroic tier, levels 1 through 10. Then you've become a paragon for adventurers. So 11 through 20, you're a paragon. And then levels 21 to the level cap of 30, you are an epic legend of an adventurer. That's epic tier. And at each of those tier differences, some abilities, some feats give you different bonuses. Like this one. We're in heroic tier right now, so it's +2 to damage that you'd get with power attack. At level 11, that would go up to 3. At level 21, that would go up to 4. Right. Improved Warforged Resolve grants 5 more temporary HP. Again, that has to do with the power, so we'll talk about that later. And component modification, again, that modifies one of the powers, so we'll talk about that in a bit. Speaking of powers, this is the sheet that I primarily use most of the time that I am playing in 4E. This is the sheet that starts off showing most of your skills, your abilities, your stats, and also starts showing off power cards. And these power cards are very important things because they let you know what attack you have and how much damage you can do with that, with what equipment you've got. So, let's take a look at what we've got here, shall we? Let's start by taking a look at, this one. Battle Guardian. Of course, all the green ones are at wills. All the red ones are encounter powers. Silver ones are dailies. Orange ones are item powers that they can depend on how often they can be used. It'll actually say daily encounter and at will. We'll show you that here in a bit. First one, as an opportunity action, meaning this can happen whenever you take an attack of opportunity. All right. If an enemy subject to your defender aura, as a knight, either shifts or makes an attack that targets an ally of yours but not you, or an ally that has an active defender aura. So basically, if it attacks anybody besides you, or if it tries to move, you can whack at the guy. You make a melee basic attack against a triggering enemy. If the attack misses, the enemy still takes damage equal to your strength modifier, which on Dinobot is a 4. Kind of a glancing blow in that case, but hey, some damage is better than no damage, right? Alright. So what is the melee basic attack? Well, we saw a little bit earlier. +13 versus AC, so average roll of a 10 means you're hitting an AC of 23. D8 +7 damage, which means max damage is 15. Unless you use power attack. If you use power attack, then it can be 17. Ranged basic attack is not important because we don't have a ranged weapon. Alright. And now we have our first encounter power. Power Strike. Some of these are very special. This one is, as you can see, listed as a no action. And that means it doesn't take up any of your 3 actions that you get in a turn. It doesn't take up a minor, it doesn't take up a move, doesn't take up a standard. It supplements one of those 3 actions. And it has a trigger. That trigger is when you hit an enemy with a melee basic attack using a weapon. The target takes an additional weapon damage from the attack. What is weapon damage? Well, each various different weapon has a hit die that goes with it. In the case of the longsword that we got for Dinobot, it's a D8. So 1 weapon damage means an additional D8. Once every encounter, you can roll an additional D8 of damage. That's pretty good damage. Alright. Next one, an at-will minor, Battle Wrath. You assume the Battle Wrath stance. Until the stance ends, you gain a +2 power bonus to the damage rolls of basic attacks using a weapon. Because, let's face it, Dinobot's all about being as brutal as possible. I prefer to defeat my opponents the old-fashioned way. Brutally! I love doing that voice. I know I'm not anywhere near as good as Scott McNeil, but I love that voice. And another at-will minor, the aforementioned Defender Aura. You activate an Aura 1, so 1 square around him. That lasts until you end it as a minor action or until you fall unconscious. While in the aura, any enemy takes a -2 penalty to attack rolls when it makes an attack that does not include among its targets either you or an ally of yours that has this aura active. Marked enemies are not subject to the aura. So basically you have this going, and while any enemy that you don't already have marked, because, well, marking is quite its own thing, and if people are marked, they already take a minus to not attacking you. Anyone else gets the -2 penalty. As long as they don't make an attack that includes you. If they have an attack that attacks multiple people, and you are amongst the targets, this does not take effect. Just keep that in mind. Alright. The Poised Assault at will minor action. You assume the Poised Assault stance. Until the stance ends, you gain a +1 power bonus to the attack rolls of basic attacks with this weapon. Because again, it's a stance used to increase brutality. Because Dinobot. I mean, let's face it. This is the same character that went full on, Western showdown, bandoliers all over, guns in hand, ready to face down the Predacons when the Fusors arrived. And if you don't think that wasn't a badass moment, you have no soul. None. Anyway, this is what I was talking about earlier, and this is the primary reason why I actually picked the samurai background, besides, the fact that Dinobot pretty much is a robo-samurai. Iai Jutsu is an encounter, free action. Happens every encounter. Trigger, when you roll initiative. So this happens every encounter right off the top. What does it do? Well, You can draw a weapon and shift up to a number of squares equal to half your speed. If you end this move adjacent to an enemy, you gain a +2 power bonus to the next attack roll that you make against the enemy before you end your turn. But there's more. If your initiative is higher than every enemy's initiative, which is very possible, in my 4E sessions this has been a case more often than not, any melee weapon attack you make during your first turn can score a critical hit on a roll of 18 to 20. Now, some weapons, of course, do have expanded ranges of like 19 to 20, greater critical threat range. Longswords are not among those. So, it expands it out to 18 to 20, so that's a good thing. It may not necessarily happen often, but being able to get a bonus to your first attack, and a better chance to crit them, pretty damn good. So, Iaijutsu. Warforged Resolve is minor action and counter power for Warforged. It is a healing keyword power. Whenever you use it, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to 3 plus 1/2 your level, so 3 plus 3, and can make a saving throw against one effect on you that deals ongoing damage. If you are bloodied, you also regain hit points equal to 3 plus 3, or 6. Now, let's roll back a little bit here. Warforged Resolve gives you an additional 5. What are temporary hit points? Well, if you've ever played the XCOM games, think of those as armor. They're the things that you have to hit first before you can actually hit the actual hit points. If your temporary hit points go down, you still have your regular hit points. And of course, them being temporary, they don't last after the end of the encounter. But even so, if you don't get through those temp hit points first, you're not hitting any HP. Alright. Glowering Threat. This is something I've seen come into good use on fighters and some of the 4E groups that I've been playing. You must have training in Intimidate to use it, which, of course, Dinobot has in spades. Until the end of your next turn, each target takes a -5 penalty to attack any creature other than you. Yes, this does stack with the mark because it doesn't say otherwise. Dauntless Endurance. You must have training in Endurance, which again, Dinobot does. If you don't think Dinobot had training in Endurance, I invite you to watch the episode Code of Hero. Besides, that is fucking fantastic episode anyway. Probably the best episode of Beast Wars. And the trigger for using this one, which again, no action and counter power, you make a saving throw and dislike the result. You can re-roll the saving throw, but must use the second result. Think of that somewhat akin to disadvantage. Somewhat akin to at disadvantage or advantage in 5e. It can work either way because either the second roll is going to be lower and you have to take that, basically works as a disadvantage, or the second roll is higher and you end up taking that one. Magic Plate Armor. Now, my Sword Mage actually used leather armor. And I kind of flavored that off as the leather armor looking much like Dinobot's reptilian hide. Magic Plate Armor is really just supposed to be enchanted metal plate armor. That's where flavor text comes in. Because nothing says that the enchantment can't make it look like the leather hide of a dinosaur. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Parrying longsword, again, damage is +8. +2. Excuse me, it's after midnight here. +2 attack rolls and damage rolls, because it is a +2 magical weapon. Critical damage, 1d6 per plus. So if you hit one of those EI Jutsu crits, you're doing an additional 2d6 damage. Baller, ain't it? Magical weapons like these also tend to have special abilities. This one is no different. It is a daily power and an immediate reaction. Because it is a parrying longsword, you can use this power whenever the enemy makes a melee basic attack against you. Make a melee basic attack against the enemy with a power bonus on your attack roll equal to the weapon's enhancement bonus, i.e. +2. If your result exceeds that of the attack roll against you, the enemy's attack misses. The melee basic attack you make to block your enemy's attack has no other effect and does not deal damage. Even so, that can get you out of a nice tight spot. If you're running low on HP, your temporary hit points are all gone, and you're really that desperate to want to stick around a little bit longer to get in there and strike, because that's what fighters are. They are strikers. Then pull this little chestnut out of your hat, and then you can just, bat the sword aside. And then last but not least, the +1 Amulet of Life. That is, of course, the magic item that he has. That's the one level below. Level 5 next slot item. Amulet neck slot items, for one thing, give their enhancement bonus to Fortitude, Reflex, and Will. But they also, again, have special powers aside, and in this case, it is a free action encounter power. Not a lot of magic items have their special abilities be encounter powers. This is one of them. And the trigger is whenever you spend a healing surge, you can spend an additional healing surge. Dinobot's got 12 healing surges. He's got plenty to spare. He can heal up 30 HP in one turn. If he needs to, once per encounter, he can heal 30 HP. Like that. How? Instead of attacking a turn, standard action, second wind. Boom. And if I remember correctly, second wind also actually gives you bonuses to defense as well, so win. In fact, let me actually go back to page 1 and remind myself of that, because, yeah, second wind, every character gets this in 4E, once per encounter. Again, it is usually a standard action, although some races allow you to use it as a minor. You spend a healing surge and regain hit points equal to your surge value. You gain a +2 bonus to all your defenses against the start of your next turn. So it's basically kind of a way to collect yourself, heal your power back up, and, well, again, in Dinobot's case, you can go almost right all the way up to full in one shot. You can fix up his bloodied value like that. I'm sorry for hurting people's ears with all those snaps. But yeah, this is the 4E version of Dinobot. And he is a pretty good beast indeed. The Sword Mage version that I'd played, I'd had a lot of fun playing with. The Sword Mage version, I think I actually made Lawful Good instead of Unaligned. So I was kind of playing him a little bit differently from the show, and I also did spare them for the most part doing the Dinobot voice. Vermin. I'm sorry. But when I started doing this series, Fun 5e Builds, I actually thought of taking some of my 4e characters and trying to upgrade them into 5e. And I did that with Dinobot amongst them. So that's what you're going to see next week. Next week, I will give you the 5e version of Dinobot. Until next time, I'm Jeremy. This has been Fun 5e Builds. Keep it casual, y'all.